The sun hung high over the city of San Bernardino, casting long shadows across the pavement of a quiet neighborhood. In this corner of California, life usually moved at a predictable pace. But for Wanda Lucero, the air felt thick with a sense of urgent responsibility. Wanda was a woman of deep convictions and even deeper family ties. For years, she had watched her sister navigate the complexities of life while caring for her daughter, Liz. Liz was a woman of 38 years who viewed the world through a lens of unique challenges. She required a gentle touch, a steady environment, and above all, a place where her dignity was respected. The story of their current struggle began in March of the year 2022. It was a time of significant transition. Wanda's sister, after decades of selfless devotion, had reached a point where she needed to move into a senior community. This decision, though necessary, created a sudden and frightening vacuum for Liz. For a brief, harrowing week, Liz found herself without a place to call home. The uncertainty took a physical toll, leading to an infection that required hospitalization. It was within the sterile white walls of the medical center that a social worker provided what seemed like a ray of hope, a referral to a room and board facility run by a man named Lawrence Block. Lawrence Block operated a large house, a structure spanning 2,000 square feet with 5 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, located at the zip code 92404. To the city, it was registered simply as a room for rent. To Lawrence, it was a business where 8 to 10 residents, all facing psychological disabilities, share their lives under the watchful eye of a house manager. The rent was set at $750 a month, a price that covered both shelter and the meals prepared from food kept securely in the garage. For a time, the arrangement seemed to hold. Wanda kept a close watch, visiting often to ensure her niece was thriving. However, beneath the surface of this communal living, a disturbing undercurrent began to pull at the fabric of Liz's safety. The turning point arrived on the 30th of November. Wanda had arrived to pick up Liz for a series of doctor appointments. As they prepared to leave the bedroom Liz shared with the house manager, Wanda witnessed a scene that chilled her heart. Liz opened her purse and began flinging undergarments toward her roommate. When they reached the sanctuary of the car, Wanda turned to her niece, her voice trembling with a mix of confusion and concern. She asked Liz why those items were in her bag. The answer was heartbreaking. Liz explained that during a trip to Walmart, the house manager had asked her to hide the items in her purse. In that moment, Wanda realized that the person entrusted with Liz's care was instead exploiting her vulnerability. It was a final straw. The decision was made instantly. Liz would never spend another night under that roof. Wanda returned to the house around 3 o'clock that afternoon, armed with heavy-duty garbage bags and a fierce determination. She and her sister began the somber task of bagging Liz's worldly belongings. The house manager was present, witnessing the departure, and she promptly called Lawrence Block to inform him that his tenant was vacating the premises. Lawrence, who was at a community hospital interviewing a potential new client, received the call with a rising sense of irritation. He finished his interview, a process that took an additional 15 to 20 minutes, and began the 30-minute drive back to property. Meanwhile, Wanda's son had arrived at the house to assist with the move. He found himself in an escalating confrontation. A resident of the house had blocked his vehicle in the driveway, preventing him from leaving. When Lawrence finally arrived, he did not see a family trying to protect a vulnerable loved one. He saw a challenge to his authority and a threat to his son, who had also arrived on the scene. The atmosphere in the driveway became electric with tension. Lawrence, fueled by what he later described as a Papa Bear instinct, was irate. He saw Wanda's dark utility vehicle blocking the end of the driveway, effectively holding his son's car in place. He began to yell, using profanity that echoed through the neighborhood. Wanda, equally firm, refused to move. She had one simple request. She wanted the clothes hamper from the garage. The hamper contained the last of Liz's items, but the garage was a restricted area, locked away to protect the food supplies from being pillaged by residents. Lawrence, in his anger, refused to cooperate. He felt held hostage by the situation and was in no mood for rational negotiation. He approached Wanda's car, the very vessel where Liz and her mother sat trembling in fear. In a moment of uncontrolled frustration, he reached out and grabbed the handle of the front driver's side door. He pulled it open, his mind clouded by a lack of rationality. He wanted her to move, but his actions only served to terrify the women inside. Wanda would later recount the chaos that followed. She described how Lawrence grabbed her car door remote and slammed the door with such force that it seemed to vibrate through her bones. She claimed he hit her windshield and then moved to the back door, where he allegedly scratched the paint. In his fury, he grabbed the bags of Liz's belongings from the car and threw them out onto the street. After finally navigating his son's car out of the driveway by driving over the curb, Lawrence turned his vehicle toward Wanda's car, approaching head-on as if he intended to strike them. The dispute eventually moved from the sun-drenched driveway to the dignified silence of the courtroom. Wanda Lucero stood before the judge, seeking justice for the damage to her vehicle and the emotional distress inflicted upon her family. She presented evidence of the repairs, noting that her out-of-pocket expense for the insurance deductible was $250. She also sought reimbursement for a new garage door opener, costing $134.95, and the $366.20 spent on a rental car while her vehicle was being repaired. The judge listened intently, her eyes sharp and her wisdom undeniable. She questioned Lawrence about his business, expressing profound concern for the lack of oversight in such facilities. It was a sobering realization that in many places, a person needs a license to give a pedicure, yet can open a home to the most vulnerable members of society with little more than a registration for a room and rent. The judge noted that when a business involves the care of those with challenges, the reputation of that business is paramount. If the environment becomes toxic, the stain of that negativity sticks to everyone involved. Lawrence admitted to opening the car door, acknowledging that he was not being rational at the time. He denied scratching the car or throwing the bags with malice, but the judge remained unconvinced by his defense. She reminded him that he had no right to touch another person's property or to physically intimidate them, regardless of his frustration. The responsibility of caring for challenged individuals is a sacred trust, one that requires patience and a level of scrutiny that seemed absent in this case. In the end, the court found in favor of Wanda Lucero. The judge awarded a judgment of $385, a figure that represented the tangible losses Wanda had suffered. But the true value of the proceedings lay in the lesson imparted to everyone in the room. It was a reminder that the most vulnerable among us require the strongest protections. As the parties left the courtroom, the air seemed lighter. Wanda felt a sense of relief, not just for the money, but for the validation of her niece's worth. She knew that the road ahead for Liz would still have its challenges, but they would face them together, in a place that was truly safe. The case highlighted a systemic need for better vetting and government oversight of boarding houses. It was a call to action for society to do better, to ensure that those who provide a haven for the disabled are held to the highest standards of compassion and accountability. Wanda's sister leaned on her arm as they walked toward the exit. They had protected Liz, and in doing so, they had honored the values of family and human decency. The memory of the confrontation in the driveway would fade, replaced by the quiet peace of a new, secure home. Lawrence Block, too, was left to reflect on his actions and the volatile nature of his business. The Papa Bear instinct, while understandable in a vacuum, was no excuse for the violation of another's safety. The story ended not with a bang, but with the soft hum of a car engine as Wanda drove her family away from the courthouse. They were moving forward, guided by love and a renewed commitment to screen the world through the eyes of those who need our help the most. It was a small victory in a large world, but for Liz, it was everything. The value of a human soul, the importance of a safe place to sleep, and the power of a family's love had been upheld in the eyes of the law. And as the sun set over California, the world felt just a little bit kinder, a little more just, and infinitely more hopeful.